For the last 15 years, Adam Montiel has been bringing you the stories, the people, and the producers that make wine better and more fun. Whether you're a connoisseur or a cork. Here, we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. It's The Pour with Adam Montiel.
Well, they say a great bottle of wine tells a story, and few stories have shaped the wine world quite like Sideways, the Rex Pickett book, which was adapted to a hugely famous movie, of course. But what happens when two seasoned journalists, one from the world of wine, the other from Hollywood, decide to uncork that story, peel back the layers, and pour out the untold tales behind the film's legendary impact? I'm Adam Montiel. It's The Pour, where we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table. And I am excited today. Why am I excited? Because we're diving into Sideways Uncorked. It's a new book by celebrated wine journalist Mira Advani Honeycutt and acclaimed film critic Kirk Honeycutt. And this power couple has spent decades immersed in their respective fields, and now they've joined forces like Voltron to explore the intersection of cinema and viticulture. With insights from director Alexander Payne from the movie, industry heavyweights, and some of the most passionate voices in wine, Sideways Uncorked goes beyond the script, really revealing how a film reshaped an entire industry. And where better to have this chat than right in the heart of San Luis Obispo at Timbre Winery, where they make great Pinot Noir. And he's played with Merlot too, I know that. Joining us in the chat is winemaker and owner Josh Klapper of Timbre, whose own journey through wine mirrors a lot of that dedication, a lot of that artistry that made Sideways a cultural phenomenon. Now, before we dive in, a quick heads up. Speaking of Pinot Noir, which we'll be talking a lot about it and drinking a lot of it today, I'm giving away tickets to World of Pinot Noir, their Friday, their Saturday grand tasting, happening February 28th and March 1st at the Ritz-Carlton Bacara in Santa Barbara. If you have not been to World of Pinot Noir, my goodness, you got to check it out. Get to adammontiel.com. I got tickets both for Friday and Saturday. Register there right off the homepage. You'll see it. adammontiel.com. I want to see you at World of Pinot Noir. Lots of dinners, tastings, panels, no matter where you are in wine. A weekend warrior or a super wine geek, or maybe you're in the industry. I don't know. World of Pinot Noir got it going on. They do a fantastic job celebrating this wine, this grape, and these producers. worldofpinotnoir.com, links in the show notes, and win those tickets. adammontiel.com. All right, in this chat, we're going to talk about the film's really enduring impact 20 years later, how it's elevated Pinot Noir while side-eyeing Merlot, of course, and whether another movie could ever do the same for wine again. So if you can't grab a glass, settle in. This is The Pour, where we taste it, we spill it, we leave it all on the table.
We are officially on. Hey, Adam, so good to have you on the podcast in my cellar.
Hey, podcast from the cellar. I like that.
Yeah. Mira, Kirk, it's great to see you guys. Thank you for sharing your time with us and for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
well, we are on a big anniversary from the Sideways movie. And this book, first of all, just from the cover of it, I mean, it seems like you're reading an extension of what the creators of the project, the movie, like almost ordained. I mean, the color scheme, you got pictures. So this was really, and then you got, thoughts from Alexander Payne in here and more. So I'm curious, Mira, what was the impetus for this book, and what kind of clearance did we need to make it just so?
Well, the impetus, the genesis really started 2 years ago. We were at Aubin Clément with the Clendon and Lindquist Vintners now. And it was their, maybe the 40th anniversary, huge big open house, tons of people, Ostini, and there are like a dozen other people who make their wines in that big warehouse. And we're sitting there, and the Biennacido vineyards are right in front of us there. Beautiful afternoon. And all these people, and I'm thinking, did we know 20 years ago the impact of this film, what it has grown, what the population, the people who are coming here now, and it just blows my mind. 20 years ago, very few people knew about Santa Ynez Valley, and then I said, you know what, Kirk, there's a book in it. It's for you. It's a film book.
Yeah,
go with it.
And before we get Kirk, I want to get into you because your bio of John Hughes delved into the life of a filmmaker who really significantly influenced American cinema. I'm curious how your experience writing that book, if it maybe informed your approach a little bit, exploring the intersection of film and wine as it relates to Sideways.
Well, you couldn't find two more different filmmakers, really. I guess they're both white males, but other than that, John Hughes was a phenomenon in that he started off doing one kind of film, which everybody remembers him for, which was the films that they actually look at teenage life seriously, although with a comic touch. And then he moved off into both critter movies and kind of Disney-esque movies, such as 101 Dalmatians and Dennis the Menace and strange films like that, where he just moved away from what he once was doing, and he did more of that than the ones we remember him for. So and then he just kind of vanished. He just went away, and then he passed on.
Did that confuse you or make you kind of side-eye that as a film critic?
Well, one person gave me some insight on that. He made a film called She's Having a Baby, which was his most personal film because it was about when his wife got pregnant for the first time. And all his films are autobiographical, you would say. In fact, the set designer complains, why do we build a different set for each movie? Because they're always the same set. And it's just, why don't we just have a standing set? And he laughed and said, that's a good idea, and of course never did it. So when that film failed, that is, She's Having a Baby, he suddenly moved away from anything you might call autobiographical and started doing Home Alone or the Dennis the Menaces, and he did move on the Disney lot and started what is now a cottage industry there, which is taking animated films and turning them into live action. And the first one was 101 Dalmatians. Alexander Payne is a whole different kind of cat. He's from Omaha, Nebraska, although there is one similarity between them. They're both Midwesterners, aren't they?
Right.
He is Greek-American in his background. His first 3 movies were made in Omaha, well, in Nebraska anyway. The first film he ever made outside of Nebraska was Sideways, and he felt everything looked too pretty. He just kept telling cinematographer, it's too pretty. He said, the cinematographer told him, no, it's just a color scheme you haven't been working with. Relax and enjoy it. So he had come upon this novel, kind of an unpublished novel by Rex Pickett. I think you know Rex. And he decided to make this film. And the novel did get, in fact, published just before the movie came out. But he decided to make this film, and he had a unique take on it, but he did follow that novel pretty closely. He obviously deviated a bit because it was a road trip that went from Los Angeles all the way to Paso Robles. He centered everything on Santa Ynez Valley, and which we now know as Santa Maria and Santa Rita Hills. And he got into the wine business. He knew a little bit about wine. He actually has a fair amount of knowledge of wine. So he was able to, in living up there for a while, understand what should be in the movie, what shouldn't be in the movie. And I think he did a really good job of representing what that community is like.
You know, I'm curious as a film critic, and because I feel like I could talk with you just, for a long time about your work at The Hollywood Reporter and watching all these movies that, we all grew up watching. I'm curious the unique challenges that you encountered when shifting from critique to co-authoring a book that really examines the cultural impact of a single film like Sideways.
Well, I don't think I abandoned film criticism when I wrote this book. Obviously, it's journalism, it's gathering information, but I certainly went through his entire career with him helping me narrate it because he was very open in interviews. We did Zoom interviews for them for about 8 or 9 months.
Yeah, he really championed our book from get-go.
So he tolerated us for 45 to 50-minute segments only. He says he wouldn't talk beyond that. So, but he was doing it 2 or 3 times a month sometimes. And once he brought in Jim Taylor, who's his co-writer, they were together in Omaha working on a screenplay at that time. And so we just did a Zoom with both of them. And I do feel like I analyze what it is he's doing throughout his films. Well, we did. But I obviously wrote a little more of the film side, just as my wife wrote a little more of the wine side.
Sure.
Because she's been a wine journalist for many, many years. And I've been in film journalism, criticism, feature writing, book writing, teaching for all my life, it feels like. So it's been not a big transition. I still think of myself analyzing these things critically.
Yeah.
and wine too. I think that we talk about wine in a critical sense, although we're very effusive about Pinot Noir, of course.
Right.
Because I think one of the nice things about this is it kind of is our favorite grape.
Yes, it just happens to be.
Yeah, right.
It's nothing to do with the film or the book. It just is,
Mira, from your perspective, I'm curious because, your extensive background in wine journalism, you've witnessed many trends in the industry.
Right.
You've seen that cyclical up and down. But how did your perspective as a wine expert shape the narrative of Sideways Uncorked, the book, especially in highlighting the film's influence on wine culture locally?
Well, the way that the book idea started is that how one film can impact the industry and has continued all these years. Usually films do impact pop culture, T-shirts, shoes, hair, makeup, whatever. But this has continued on, and we're kind of wondering, why was that so? And as we have explained, actually, when the whole Pinot and Merlot shift came, there was something happening in the market. Pinot was kind of on the rise, but hadn't really gone through the stratosphere like it did after the movie. So it was on the horizon. People knew about it. It was just on the rise. Merlot at the time was a lot of it by the glass program at any restaurant, bar, even a little ethnic small cafe. I want a glass of red wine. What was it? A Merlot. What, $6-7 a glass at that time?
Yeah, it was an easy target.
Easy target. And it was very friendly. It was a friendly wine on the palate. It had good fruit. It had medium tannins.
Didn't seem to bite you back too much.
No, not too heavy tannic or anything. So people liked the feel of it on the palate. It was the American palate loved Merlot.
Yeah. I'm curious, collaborating with Kirk, who brings, like we just talked about, that film critic's viewpoint, must have offered a unique dynamic. And I'm curious how your combined expertise in wine and film journalism enhanced the storytelling for the book here. Yeah,
so in fact, when our agent approached our publisher, the one who was a few that he approached, they were baffled. Is it a film book? Is it a wine book? And how do we market it? Does it go in the film section? Does it go in the wine section? So we said, why not both the sections? Somebody mentioned, why not travel section? Pop culture, whatever. But it was interesting because we were wondering, okay, we have all these wonderful interviews with the whole cast of the film, the actor, the director, the producer, and DP, and all of these people. And then we have all these great vintners that we interviewed now and previous interviews that we've had that we compiled and put them together, like a previous interviews with Aubert de Villaine in Burgundy and Etienne de Montet. So how do we do it, And it was a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah. Did you find a lot of opinions changed from some of these people that you had a chance to talk to way long ago to now?
Well, yes, Richard Sanford, for example.
Oh, legend. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we had a wonderful chat with him, and he till today just cannot understand the impact of it. A lot of people don't understand. And even Alexander said, I don't understand that one line. I didn't think that one line would topple the whole industry down in the country.
Well, you're talking about the Merlot line.
The Merlot, sorry.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
no, right.
We all know what we're talking about, but for your
yeah.
listeners, and that one effing Merlot, you know. He said, I had not a clue that one line could do this, But looking back, it was... we coordinated well, we went back and forth. Do we do a chapter on film, then do a chapter on wine, and then explain a little bit, and not go too much, as they say, inside baseball in the wine.
Right.
Well, there's two stories going on here.
Yeah.
One is the story about wine and why Santa Barbara was where the movie was taking place, as opposed to Napa Valley, where you might logically think a wine story would take place. And why was it focused on a grape that people didn't know much about? In fact, there's a line in the movie where Miles says of Jack, don't mind him. A couple of days ago, he didn't know Pinot Noir from film noir. So, and therefore allowing the audience to say, I didn't know much difference between those things either.
Right. Yeah, like me too.
Right.
And, so he has to instruct Jack the whole way through the movie how you sip and taste and swirl and look at wine, how you talk about wine, how you think about wine. He's actually educating the public while that's happening.
Yeah.
So
did he know that? Was that deliberate?
No. I think it just made. Well, I think they were smart enough to know that, but I don't know if they realized they were making a movie that would have a huge impact on
Well, it's
another
funny
business.
because I feel like the beginning time, and I don't know, I'm curious, and this might be a question for all three of you, and I'll start with Josh on this one. When did this movie Sideways, I'm curious where you were in your journey, because you were, you learned your chops in those neck of the woods and stuff. When did this movie become, at least in your spectrum, not just anti-Merlot, but pro-Pinot?
So I think the movie came out in 2003. At the
2004.
Time, 2004.
Yeah,
sorry.
20th anniversary.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, 2004. I just remember because it was the year that I got. It was the year after I got married. I was working at a restaurant in Los Angeles. I had been the sommelier there for a little over a year. It was a great restaurant called Sona, and it was like California cuisine. But French and Asian influence, and Pinot Noir was that variety that went really well. And at that time, there was no, the debate in the sommelier community was what's the best, Burgundy or Bordeaux? Like this is before wines were coming in a massive way from other parts of the world. So really, we were dealing with Old World and New World. So New World being like Australia and California and maybe South Africa. Old World being France, Italy, and Spain. Wine, forget Eastern Europe or all these other places, right? And so Pinot Noir and Burgundy, that had a huge place on the list, and then American Pinot Noir, and then the other things that were great with food were German Riesling and maybe a little Chardonnay, but that a little Bordeaux. But the conversation in the wine community was, we all know that Pinot Noir is the greatest red variety. Only to be, if we're talking about the greatest red wine, well, Bordeaux is very important in the history, and there's a lot more made, and more people, maybe it's worth more money. Not today. Today, Burgundy has gone crazy, but we knew that Pinot Noir was amazing. And so when this movie came out, it was more a someone putting a microphone to something that we were already talking about. The conversation had already happened, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about for you, Kirk? When did the movie start to, when did that kind of, that essence of, okay, we're shitting on Merlot, fade into, no, we're glorifying Pinot?
Wait a minute,
when did you feel that happen? It feels like the first 10 years of this 20 years that we're celebrating. It feels like all we talked about was Merlot and how it got shit on. And again, to the folks in the know, like Josh and these, whether they're somms or, budding winemakers, of course, they probably all knew Pinot Noir was the bomb, but
let me just interject here.
Please.
So you mentioned 2003 and 4, right? When you were... So early 2000s, I used to do an Asian food and wine festival in LA as a fundraiser for the Asia Society, and it was held at the 20th Century Fox studio lot. And I invited 20 of the top Asian restaurants, including Wolfgang's Chinois Main, and Best Sushi Roku and all that. And I would invited about 20 hand-picked vintners from Santa Barbara mostly, Willamette, and some from Napa and Sonoma, mostly for Pinots, because it paired well with Asian foods.
I love you said Sushi Roku. I used to just love that place.
So I didn't want any Cabernets, Syrahs, and Zins,
right?
Yeah. But a lot of our Santa Barbara friends, Foxen and Babcock and Melville, they're all there pouring. And so it was really Asian food. It wasn't specifically Pinot. I didn't want to say that, but majority of them were bringing their Pinots. So there you go.
What I would say is, if you were doing wine around 2003, 4,
right.
Didn't we weren't half the people you knew Miles?
Yeah, think about it.
It's when I watched the movie, for me, the Miles character was not a surprise. He was just the kind of person who took wine seriously, and I knew a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
And with the exception of a few amazing wines of the world, like Macedo or Petrus,
right.
or these are Merlot-based wines.
Right. Sassicaia.
Yeah, we weren't trying to pair Merlot with anything in the restaurant. So it was like, Miles was this, characterization of this, very particular, very knowledgeable consumer. And that's who we dealt with in the wine business. So the fact that everyone else realized that, it was, or saw that side, I think that added to the comedy because, yes, Miles is hilarious, but he's also right.
That's Josh Klapper of Timbre.
I first saw this going back to when it first hit me. I was probably one of the first people to ever see it that was not part of the inner circle at Searchlight Pictures that were looking at the film constantly. And Alexander Payne's method is to screen this film for a lot of friends. But once it got out in the public, I was one of the first persons to see it because it was at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of 2004. I went to the very first press screening in the middle of the morning. It's a good time for a wine movie, right?
Yeah.
And then the following night was the world premiere. So I went to see the film, and I loved it because, as I told my wife when I got back to the hotel, all our friends are in it. So I got tickets. I never do this at film festivals, but I got tickets because I don't want to see a film twice because I was too busy. But I got tickets for the premiere. After my review, they were very happy to give it to me. And we went to the world premiere, which is in the book, so I'm glad I was there. So I saw it twice in 2 days, but I'd had no concept of the impact it would have on, A, the independent film business, B, the career of the people in the film. It made all the actors. Some of them had had a career before then, and then they remade them in a way. Like Virginia Madsen had been a kind of a bombshell in those teen movies in the 70s and 80s, but she was now playing, housewives and Lifetime channel movies. And Paul Giamatti had not been discovered yet by the public. We critics knew about him because he had been starring in smaller films, independent films. But so the impact on the people, but also the impact on the wine industry. This, I had no idea it was going to happen. Nobody did. And it just hit everything like a tsunami, and it's never quite recovered.
When I was going to ask you, actually, right before you said that, how you first became interested in the cultural impact of Sideways. And it must have just been because, like you said, you knew some of these people, you're from this, you were familiar.
We were familiar with it, but we thought, this is an interesting book in that it talks about popular culture. How does it work? How does it have this influence? And if you think about movies that influence something else, you can't come up with too many. There aren't a lot of films a film could be about politics. It could be about sports car racing. It could be about horse racing. It could be a lot of different things. But that has its own fan base already. That's already there. But a film that comes out and talks about an area of the world and wine world that nobody's ever been to or heard of, and there's sort of an outlier at that point. And then it makes that wine world very familiar to people, and people started flocking to it. And then that grape was being asked for in restaurants and wine shops and all kinds. And it made everybody a little nuts because at that point of time, if you think about 20 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't everybody thinking Syrah was the next big thing?
Right.
They've been hoping for that forever.
Yeah, that's been like 50 years, I think. Syrah's been the next big thing forever.
Fingers crossed, right?
Certainly not Pinot Noir. Certainly not Pinot Noir.
Certainly not Pinot Noir. And there's these cycles of 10, 15 years of wine. Once upon it was Chardonnay and Merlot.
Yeah.
Now everything got speeded up by, instead of a 10-year cycle, it was about a 3-month cycle.
Right. It's short-lived. Any of this.
Suddenly it just took off, and it's never come back to ground level. It's still, Pinot's still like the number 2 red grape.
But to answer your question, so over the years, people have written so many stories on the Sideways effect. Journalists have written, and every time there's a 5th anniversary, 10th, But when we were doing this book, when I came up with the idea, I didn't even think of the 20th anniversary because I totally lost track of, what year and all, and then we started working on the book. But nobody has really put it in a book form.
Well, I knew it was the 20th anniversary, and I know an agent had come to me and say, "Hey, I read your John Hughes thing, and what do you got? Have any ideas?" And we kicked around some ideas, and whatever he wanted me to do, I didn't want to do, and vice versa. But I know he loves pop culture. I know he loves anniversary books, and so I thought, It's coming up. This is 2002. Okay, 2024. Okay, yeah, okay. So I pitched it to him, and sure enough, he thought it was a good idea. He could only find one publisher who got it, but fortunately, the guy liked movies and he liked Pinot Noir.
Nice.
So
and we'll send you all the Pinot you need. So.
Yes.
So we found one guy who acquired it for a company that was, while we were writing the book, was acquired by Bloomsbury, which is a major publisher in London. I think they did it just to get a hold of this book. That's my theory.
Yeah, we feel that. Let's get this book in our stable.
I take full credit. We take full credit
for the acquisition. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm curious. And I want this from all of you. This question, and I'll start with Mira. We'll go down the line. Do you think Pinot Noir would be as popular today without the Sideways effect?
Not as popular today. No.
No, I agree.
100% not as popular.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible with the film. And because you know this more than anyone, Kirk, in what you did as a film critic, a book and the way the film is adapted to screen can sometimes be very different. Mm-hmm. And, while in my first few interviews with Rex Pickett, it was like, hey, I'm just the author kind of thing. And he seemed to have to get a lot of questions that he probably wasn't either ready or wanting to answer. And for a while, I remember I did a Cork Dorks interview with him. And I feel like I had the chance to talk to him already a couple times, and Jeremy maybe not. And Jeremy just laid into him why he shit on Merlot. And he's like, wait, just hold on a second. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, was there chats with? I mean, I know Rex is trying to do the circuit with this book and stuff. I mean, with this
his book,
with his book and with the anniversary is what I meant. Were there chats with him on this? And I'm sure you've.
Well, we interviewed him for a few hours one afternoon. We were in Napa, and he gave us his side. And
we've known Rex for a long time.
Yeah.
In fact, we first met him. He wasn't a big part of the original publicity push. And this gets into a tricky area about his relationship with the film and with the producer. It was testy in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Why was that, you think?
And, I think part of the problem is that he was drinking. Miles is based on him. He makes no bones about it.
Right.
He's a little...
Well, you're trying to be nice, so he's a little spicy.
He drank a bit too much.
Okay.
He doesn't drink anymore. He sips and spits. He's still involved with wine very heavily. He loves the wine business. He loves wine. He doesn't drink it, but he sips and spits. I've seen him in many occasions at wineries up here. So I didn't get to know him in that first push because he wasn't always welcome at the party, because he would sometimes
be a little verbose.
Get into the dark side.
Sure.
So
we all see people
and he
like
still
that.
has some antipathy to him and the producer of the film, Michael London. But we got to know him at the first time at the Zinfest, as they used to call it, up here in Paso Robles.
Oh my gosh, I'm very familiar.
Well, it's now become the Paso Robles Wine Festival, but it was Zinfest.
Well, no, Zinfest was in March, and they kind of just, a lot of people in Paso who didn't make Zin would bellyache that, you don't do something for us. So they kind of took that third week in March and just they've been more inclusive with it,
yeah. But he was up here, and he was actually giving a talk at Justin, which he all thought was peculiar, because Justin is, of course, a total Bordeaux house.
Yeah.
But there is no Burgundy house in Paso Robles because the weather doesn't permit it. So,
yes. Well, I can't listen to that and not give love to my boy. Yes, Mark Goldberg.
Paso Robles.
Same
Paso Robles.
Yeah.
Paso Robles.
I think it's the one.
Mark Goldberg, he's the one, yeah.
We have him in our book.
Do you? Oh, cool.
Yes.
He's a legend. He's a...
Mark Goldberg was actually, that's when I met Mark Goldberg at the same time I met Chris Pickett, because he was pouring wine because Justin Baldwin called up Mark and says, hey, we got this book and the author's talking about it, and I don't have any wine to pour for that book. So he had Mark come in and set up a little thing inside the cellar of Justin.
No way. How cool.
But anyway, I got to know Rex, and we would go to dinner together, and sometimes I'd go over to his place in Santa Monica and hang out, and he'd show me how to use the computer for Facebook and Twitter and all those things, because he was very big on social media in those days, and he was writing his second book. And so he wrote he's written a series of books now, and he's got a play that he did. Someone talked him into doing a play, which was done at the Santa Monica Airport, of all places. There's a theater there. And then he turned it into a musical, and that's played a few places, odd places, like Latvia and things like that. Anyway, the play is done well. The musical they're playing with, they're trying to get it done. And he has had his 4th Sideways novel published this year, I think it was January or February, and it takes place in New Zealand, which is Pinot country.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife's read it. I have not yet. But he wrote a couple of books. Vertigo, which is about him becoming sober and why, and his relationship with his mother. And that's a serious sequel to the original Sideways book. To the question of whether it'll ever be, these will be movies, no, they will not be, because the people involved, well, they're much too old to be playing. They're 20 years older. So I don't see that as happening. And he's very careful about how he ages his people in his novels. They don't seem to age quite as bit. It's almost like John le Carré and his George Smiley, who doesn't seem to quite age in the same way that the decades go by and he's only like about 5 years old.
Right,
You know?
yeah. I'm curious, as a film critic, Kirk, what was it about Sideways that made it such a hit with audiences and critics alike?
You know, Alexander Payne has to get a lot of the credit here. Alexander Payne said at a recent event they had in Westwood that there would be no Sideways without Rex Pickett, and sure, that's true. But on ways, there would be no Sideways phenomenon that we were talking about without Alexander Payne, because he and his co-writer, to give Jim Taylor, have this strange take on things where they are able to make fun of things that you almost don't think are funny. If you think about it, Citizen Ruth was a comedy about abortion. Well, it isn't really about abortion. It's about fanaticism around abortion. Election is about an election in high school where you see it in terms of the cynicism of election campaigns. God knows we've just been through one.
Right.
The previous film was about Schmidt, which is about an old man coming to terms with all the failures of his life. And he thinks of it as kind of like The Graduate, only The Graduate as he's now leaving the workforce in retirement. And so he sees it in that kind. So he sees things, he takes very serious subjects, and he finds humor in them in ways that most people do not. I think Richard Linklater is another filmmaker who does that. His current film, Hitman, is
I feel like I get in trouble with that at home. You know, my sense of humor is of that kind of darker way where I will use it. I will use my sense of humor to deal with other things.
Yeah, there's a pain threshold, and something is so painful that the only thing response is to laugh. If you think about what Jack goes through physically as well, because he has a pretty badly broken nose at the end of this movie, but all the physical things they go through, and yet it's funny, and it's like you can slip on a banana pill and people like it, but that if you break your nose, I don't know, is that funny? Well, he finds a way to make it funny. So I think it's his unique take that made the film such a big hit. But I do feel he's made other films every bit as good as Sideways, but I don't know if they'll have the same cultural and worldwide impact as this movie does.
Yeah. Before we ask the authors, I'm curious to you, Josh. As a person who makes Pinot Noir, what makes Pinot Noir the heartbreak grape?
You know, it's funny. I've never thought of it as such because as a sommelier, when I was going into making wine, all I wanted to make was Pinot Noir. And so I went and I found the guru of the variety, and at the time, and still thought of as basically the guru of Pinot Noir in the United States, Jim Clendenin. Ended up working with Jim for 5 years. I made my wines at his winery. And if you learn how to make eggs from a master at cooking eggs.
By the way, he loves eggs.
We've talked about eggs many times.
And I love eggs too.
But, there's something so simple about making an egg, but it's also extremely complicated because it's so fast. It takes, all of 90 seconds. And if you look away for 1 second, it's either too much, too little, if the heat is wrong, all of those things. But if all you do is make eggs, then making eggs is easy, right? And that's how I think about Pinot Noir. Now, I think the reason why people think Pinot Noir is a heartbreak grape is because it's hard to grow It's hard to get yield. So the clusters, especially a year like this, they're very tiny. So, with Pinot Noir, sometimes it's like 10 to 15 clusters per pound. Whereas with something like Grenache, a one cluster could be 3 pounds or something like that. And so when you go in and you look at how many clusters are on the vine early on, when they're just there's basically little dots on the vine, right? And you see, oh my God, we've got 15 clusters, we've got 20 clusters. We're doing great. Well, when they grow with Pinot Noir, sometimes they're the size of your thumb. Sometimes they're the size of your fist if you're lucky, right? And so starting with growing it, it's very hard to actually get the yield right. Then you've got the problem of the skins. They're very, very thin. So they're very susceptible to lots of different things, but like sunburn and other things. Also, it tends to ripen earlier. If it ripens earlier, that means that all the animals that are flying around and looking to eat grapes, they're all really hungry when Pinot Noir just starts getting ripe. And it's one of the first things before most of the white varieties even. And so animals are going around and saying, oh, I smell something delicious. By the time Cabernet gets ripe, they've had their fill of everything. They're already tired from the feasting, right? Also, it's very nutritious. So once it goes into the fermenter, yeast, so it's great for the fermentation. Yeast likes to eat it. But at the end of fermentation, sometimes there's still nutrition left over. And so all of that nutritious deliciousness is there for every microbe that wants to eat something. They love Pinot Noir. They love Pinot Noir. It's a very healthy environment for them to be.
So interesting to understand that.
Every step of the process. Also, because the skins are thin, not a lot of tannin. And tannins.
And color.
Tannins and color. Both of those things, tannins and intensity of flavor, right? So that the skins have a very intense flavor. So a variety that has a lot of intensity covers up a lot of the flaws. So you rarely taste these like very mild flaws on something like Cabernet, whereas Pinot Noir, it's like totally obvious.
Isn't also a heartbreak on the consumer's end in that you fall in love with this wonderful wine.
My, yeah.
And then you go looking for it again. And
you never know what you're going to get.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Good call, Kirk.
And you can spend a lot of money on a Burgundy and not really. Well, I think Burgundy's actually gotten a lot better, but I mean, you can. Right. Spend a lot of money, and it's not what
all of
you
those
want,
things.
and you're spending. Well, never mind the money, but it's just you want that taste. It's
Is that a consumer looking for a certain fingerprint with Pinot Noir, but because it's such a grape of place that it only offers you where it's from?
Yes. Pinot Noir from every different variety shows so much. Pinot Noir, you can see it, and it's barely pink, right? You can have a red Pinot Noir that's like barely pink, and you can get one that's black. And flavor wise, think of that same range from pink to black. And aromatically, and then think of all the things I said and every mild fault that could be in there. And it's almost like if you're looking at a piece of art, right? And you look at like a Mondrian, and there's like a few lines and a few colors, and you look at it and your mind is completely blown, right? It's right in front of you on the canvas, and that's so powerful, but it's so simple, right? And then you look at a Pollock. And you're standing in front of it, and the thing is like 10 times the size of you. It's massive with all this. And on paper, you're like, that's so simple. But then when you stand in front of it, you see the power of that, right? And I'd say Pinot Noir is more just like that really simple thing. Whereas if one line is wrong, if one thing is wrong, you immediately can see it. Whereas with like Cabernet, you're looking at like a big, massive Pollock where it's like overpowered. You're like, it's amazing, you know? But Pinot Noir, everything shows up, every flaw.
It can't hide his
So
flaws.
our next book is going to be about art and Pinot Noir. I will announce it
Sure.
right now.
All right, thanks.
I've gotten the idea.
It's already there,
Yeah.
It's how Pinot has influenced art, and art is, well, I don't know. I got to think about it.
Mira, let me ask you, how did Sideways manage, because I've been trying to do this for the last 15 years of what I have been doing with interviews with winemakers and producers and being blessed enough to have these folks, men and women open their cellars, their arms and minds and be open books to us with a microphone in front of them. How did Sideways manage to make wine more approachable rather than elitist?
Good. Two things. Approachable people who wanted big red tannic wines, they sort of got into it, and they liked it. They suddenly found something different, and their palates started enjoying that. Then what happened was a lot of bad Pinot was grown
Yes.
in places where it should not have been planted, which there is a lot of, and you probably know well, Josh, is that you're in the business, a lot of bad Pinot out there. So I think a lot of producers were trying to approach the public who didn't want a $40, $50, $80 Pinot. Well, here's a $20 Pinot. So people started going there, and to them, the first introduction would be a $20 Pinot, and that's what they would think what a Pinot is like.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but hopefully they will progress, then they'll try a $50 Pinot, So at least they have entered the Pinot realm in that sense. And not in a good way, but at least they have been introduced to it, And it is approachable also in the sense that it's friendly wine, It's a heartbreak grape, but it's friendly wine, soft tannins, a much lighter color, and people who are going the first time into drinking wine, who don't like big, heavy tannic wine, this is good for them.
Yeah. Kirk, from a film critic, how did Sideways open the doors to that weekend warrior? Maybe not that connoisseur, but someone who wanted to try and be one.
Well, it presented two guys, with one being the geek and one being the ignoramus, more or less. And he is all along showing him how you taste wine, not to chew gum when you're drinking wine, things like this. And so the consumer, the film consumer who knows nothing about wine, is looking at this and suddenly realizing, this is something I can do.
It's a thing.
It's a thing, and I can go to these places and start learning a little bit about it. I can go to my local wine store. Actually, there's wineries in all 50 states of the United States, so there are tasting rooms around. I don't know how good they are in New Mexico or Arizona, but they're there. In fact, Thomas Hayden Church told us something interesting. He said when we were at the big Sideways celebration a couple of weeks ago down in L.A., he said, he lives in Texas, he's a Texan, and he said the Texas wine industry, the belief is there that Sideways spawned the whole thing.
Wow.
Because he walked into a tasting room and the guy said, "What are you doing here? You're the reason why I'm here."
No way.
Yeah, he
Texas
said
Was it Fredericksburg?
Now, he doesn't
Blow it
know
up.
Pinot Noir,
Blow
but
it up.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is what the winemaker expressed to him when
That's
he walked
cool.
into a tasting room. So it had this impact where people suddenly realized it was not something that you had to have a PhD in. You could just go in and ask questions and talk to the somm in the restaurant, and it just made it a little more approachable. And also how wine can pair with romance. It's a romantic movie, let's face it. So makes it a kind of a sexy thing.
What's the one thing, Kirk, you hope readers take away about the artistry in both film and wine after reading this book?
Well, that's an interesting question because, the winemakers who were first trying to get Pinot Noir established here in California ran up against banks who didn't want to loan money because they said, well, wait a minute, it says here in the market guide that what pays the most is Cabernet, and Pinot Noir doesn't pay that much. So we'll loan you money for Cabernet, even though you're in San Lucia Highlands where you shouldn't be planting it, but not when it's Pinot Noir, because that has no market value. And then there's a lot of maverick filmmakers out there who, in those days, were making independent films, showing them at Sundance, but once they got out of Park City, Utah, it was hard to get people to see them. So there's a kind of symbiotic relationship between these two things.
Yeah, there is, isn't there?
Now, I don't know today what's going on. We have, in the wine world, there is a glut of wine. The prices are going up, but the prices are going down for people who are growing wine. There's a real crisis in wine. Meanwhile, there's an even bigger crisis in cinema. Because, as Martin Scorsese says, the movies being made nowadays seem more like applicable to theme parks than they do in cinema.
Marvel and this.
Yeah, it's Marvel and DC Comics, and hey, they sell.
How much did the pandemic hurt? It hurt the
the
film
pandemic
industry.
hurt cinemas so that that I say theaters, so that everybody watches streaming. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because we can stream all kinds of independent films at home now.
Sure.
Which
our film fests. I mean, are you
I
going?
used to see
Awesome.
these. I used to see films at film festivals and say, Cannes or Berlin or Sundance, and say it's a shame people can't see these movies. Well, now they can.
Mm-hmm.
They really can. Mira likes to watch some Hindi movies every now and then.
Yes. Yeah, it's great.
There weren't a lot of Hindi cinemas in California. I think there were like 1.5. So, it's wonderful that you can see these films. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but we've got to get back to real movies and real houses. And we've got to figure out a way to get the wine price down and and not, follow the market so much and just try to have people make wine they want to make. Like Josh does.
What do you think, Josh? I mean, we're in this time now where we're needing to attract more wine drinkers than ever. Do you think there's another Sideways-like cultural phenomenon to spark renewed interest? Could a modern take on Sideways inspire the next generation of wine enthusiasts? I mean, the last couple wine events I've been at, dude, I mean, it's like they're open, whether it's like big names, principal names of places like, dude, we need more people to drink this shit. Like, come on.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm having so many conversations all the time with everybody I know in the wine business. What's going on? What's the deal? Why is it like this? Why are less people drinking? And to me, I try to live my life in moderation. And I don't know if there's going to be a Sideways movie about, we're all trying to be healthy, but sometimes the healthiest thing is to have a glass of wine or I'm going to go crazy. Yeah. Right. And it feels like I don't know the answer to that. I wish there could be, but the truth is, I think at least for the kind of wines that I make and the kinds of wines that my friends make, and I'm friends with people in all different levels of the industry, from small wineries to, I'm considered like a micro, but we're small, to even the biggest ones. I think that the wine business and wine at its best is a product that's made with a lot of intentionality and a lot of love and care and passion, because there's certainly no money in it right now. I think I'm such a small player that I don't see the concern that people are drinking less. Yeah. I don't personally see that.
So it doesn't affect you personally.
Because there's always someone who, if someone stops drinking wine, I can find someone else to buy a bottle of Timbre. But certainly collectively as an industry, I think that's a major problem, Right. I've been doing this about 20 years as well. So this is my 20th vintage, 2024. I started the winery in 2005, but I was telling
you're making wines in 04.
Yeah, I was making wines in 04, and from the 04 vintage, and I've seen a number of different cycles, but none of them were cycles where people were not, they were stopping drinking. So I've seen different financial cycles. I've seen, kind of market crashes.
Yeah, we see 08, 09.
Right, yeah.
But, what I realized, with wine, because every vintage is so new, it's like, it's so new that we're not talking about like apples and oranges. We're talking about, this year I made apples. Next year I'm making erasers. So, that's how different every vintage is from one to the next.
Sure.
And so I realized that the financial situation that we're in with high interest rates, that's something that my peers and I, all of the people who've been in this business for 20 to 25 years, we've never been making wine in a high interest rate environment. And so many of us are borrowing money to do this, and it's like, how does that actually affect because winemaking is not a big margin business. It's thousands of years old, and everyone's figured out how to squeeze every last penny from every part of the process, And so that's a concern for me is, not only are the people I know worried about gas and groceries, even people that can afford $40 or $50 bottles of wine are concerned about those things because they're my age. They're sending their kids to college. They're worried about their 401ks and what's happening and I can never sell my house because all of those things are also affecting wine. Not only the fact that people maybe think alcohol's not healthy. Like that's ridiculous.
I was
right?
going to ask you, what about the neo-prohibitionists that are out there now? What's that doing?
It's something that I don't understand. It's like someone saying that no level of fat is healthy. Okay, so that means what pleasure do we take from this life? Okay, so I'm going to be so healthy, but I can't eat anything that's delicious. I can't drink anything. I can't do, everything is killing us now. That's what we're finding out, right?
But everything's in moderation.
Right,
That's
right.
the whole point, whether it's fat or wine or
But the
carbs.
neo-prohibitionists are saying not one bit of alcohol.
Right.
Yeah,
it's to me, it's insane. I'm a big fan of a comedian, Tom Papa. I don't know if you've heard his stuff, but he has this joke where he goes, I have a friend who doesn't eat bread. They don't eat bread. Like, what is the point of living?
I agree.
And that's how I feel about wine. And one thing that I think, bringing it back to Sideways, is this character Miles. And what was Thomas Hayden Church's character?
Jack.
Jack.
What it did for people was it gave them a language. It gave them they learned how to use these words, So I've been in tastings where people are like, "Oh, the afterbirth of this wine." I'm like, "No. You're going in the right direction, but the word is finish. We're looking for finish. Not aftertaste. Finish, right? So, but it gave a language. And then the Somme movies. I watched the first Somme movie at a little art house theater in San Francisco. There was like 10 seats, and I'm sitting in the seats. And in the first 5 minutes of the movie, I was going through that process at the time. And my hands were sweating, and I was all like, I was getting nervous. I was like, what is going on? And then I think one of the first big jokes of the movie was, this smells like either a garden hose or a freshly opened can of tennis balls, right? Yeah, something like that. Freshly got, I don't know. And the 10 people in the theater started laughing. And I realized at that moment, I was like, oh, this is a comedy. Like, I had no idea. I thought it was just like a serious documentary, but it was actually kind of, it was trying to bring fun to it. And I think that's partially what Sideways did for wine, which is this it makes people nervous to go into a restaurant and order a bottle of wine. Yes. But this gave them a comfort level and a language and something they could digest because it was hilarious.
It really speaks to that approachability.
And it changed the whole landscape and culture of tasting wine, going to tasting rooms and having that friendly atmosphere, with the server, with the pourer. It just made it very friendly.
Yeah. Kirk, do you think we'll ever see a movie again that will have as much impact on a niche industry as wine again, like wine?
Well, this was totally unpredictable, so that would also fall in the same category. You can't predict something like that. Because the people who made this film had no clue.
No clue.
And I'm talking about not just the filmmakers, but the marketing people, the distributing people, even the production company. They thought they'd made a nice little film. They had no idea that this was going to take off and sell $70 million worth of tickets, 120 some worldwide, and be in like 1,400 theaters. This doesn't happen with independent cinemas. They play in 6 or 12, or maybe they expand to 20. But when the Oscars nominations came out, it went up to 1,400. It just doesn't happen, and certainly now it's impossible right now.
What do you think, or maybe how do you think Sideways would be different if it were made today in the streaming era?
Wow, hard to know. It's hard to know because it's something that helps to have an audience there. All comedies benefit from an audience because you hear the laughter. This is why they put soundtracks on, laugh tracks on old TV shows. I wish they'd get away from that, frankly, but.
How do you know when to laugh?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, when I watch the Marx Brothers, I kind of know when to laugh.
No.
But it is, you do laugh more when there are people around you. It's just a given.
I mean, that Merlot line would not be as funny if you're streaming.
Oh, I'd laugh. The first time I heard it,
you would laugh, yes,
Yeah,
but
sure,
wouldn't have the impact, as in a theater.
No, I don't know about how you could ever predict something like this happening because when it does happen, it surprises everyone, including the filmmakers. You go back in time, in cinema history, there's all these movies that shock the hell out of the people who made them because they didn't have any idea what the movie they made was. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite movies is Some Like It Hot. It's a Billy Wilder film. I went to the AFI's salute, American Film Institute salute to Billy Wilder, and I asked Jack Lemmon, this is the after party, Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, Billy Wilder himself, all three gone now, did you know the movie you're making? Because if you think about it, it's all about this, these guys dressing up as girls, and it's a very unusual film where the final line makes you rethink the entire movie. And I said, did you understand the movie you were making? And they all said the same thing, no. We had no idea we were making a film. We thought we were making a funny movie about, like Milton Berle dressing up.
Right.
Yeah, they just saw it that way. It was based on a previous German film that Billy Wilder knew. They had no concept of all the layers that movie has. Hysterically funny movie, but if you really look at it in terms of role-playing and gender fluidity and you name it, it's all there. It's so up-to-date now. It's more up-to-date now than it was when it came out in, 1960?
Yeah.
So, no, they had no idea. So it's impossible for me to say what kind of film like it would be, but I hope it happens in a way that it's in a cinema and we can get back to seeing real movies about real people. Make your superhero movies, but having some real movies too.
And also, this movie wasn't made with an intention to showcase wine industry.
Right.
It was just,
it just happened.
It just happened.
It was organic.
And until Alexander has told us several times, and we have it in the book, is that I had no idea the impact it would have.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering.
I'm curious, Kirk, looking back at your time as chief film critic at The Hollywood Reporter, how would you say the indie film landscape has evolved since Sideways came out, especially for films that blend niche subjects like the wine industry with universal themes?
I think it did very well, say, a decade later. But then there's been this slow erosion. A lot of reasons for that. The pandemic is one of them. There's been a slow erosion. Our Sundances still go strong every year. There's still films there. But do they leak into the public consciousness the way they started doing back when the heyday of these films, starting with Sideways and films by Richard Linklater and people like that? I think it's gone downhill since then. There is an independent. It's there. It's never going to go away.
Right.
But most of the filmmakers I talk to, including guys that have always been independent, one person said, if there is an independent film movement now, it's independent of me. So it's
a great line.
Yeah, I worry about that. I think there'll always be people who will grab a camera, and nowadays you can use an iPhone and go out and make a decent movie. And there have been movies made with iPhones, so you can do it. So the cost is no longer the issue.
Yeah. What do you think about? I'm so curious, and in a second, I want to give Kirk all of our favorite movies and have him either rate them or rip us apart on them. But what about the film critic industry? I mean, now there's like Flickster and this. I mean, there's no more days of folks like. I mean, it's different now, right? Like, I mean, Siskel and Ebert. I mean, you guys for a long time it was this very unique industry. But now with the Flicksters and the Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think of the film critic industry right now?
It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
it doesn't exist. The only jobs available are on the trades. The New York Times hires people. The LA Times has a person or two hired. I can't speak for Chicago Tribune does. I mean, I'm talking about major publications, legacy publications. There's more film critics now than ever, but they're all bloggers,
just like there's more
themselves.
Food critics than ever on Yelp.
Yeah. And it's like the influencers. I mean, it's descended to that. And every now and then I want to look up what people say about a particular movie, and I will use Rotten Tomatoes, not to hear what the aggregate says, because I could care less, but I just want to look at filmmakers I would pay attention to, and I can't find any. I can't find anybody I want to read because I don't know who these people are. I don't know what level of knowledge they have about film. At one upon a time, when there was a real media, when there was a real newspaper business, and in some cases TV, as you mentioned, Siskel and Ebert, people had been vetted. People had come to those jobs with a wealth of knowledge. And I don't find that wealth of knowledge even among some of the people in my own LA Films Critics Association anymore. They're just people who love movies and they like to go to movies and they're fans of this or that. And they're not serious film critics. They don't exist anymore.
What was the? I'll remember my question. It just escaped me. But what was it? Oh, it was so good. It was. You try to remember it, and you're just going to forget it. So let me move on to the next question, and then it'll come back to me. But no, I've just been fascinated by the idea of the way that industry has changed. I mean, we used to look to film critics for I remember my question. How did you master the idea of explaining a movie to someone without spoiling it and without giving too much of the punani away to don't ruin this for someone, just enough? What was the methodology behind that?
Well, we're getting way from Sideways here, but
no, because you're in front of me with a microphone. I got to ask you these things.
Well, the easiest thing is not to concentrate too much on plot. If you read most of critics nowadays, so-called, they're just mostly telling you what happens in the film. And I wanted as little of that as possible. I didn't want to explain too much about what happens in the film. That's why you go to see the film. I wanted to try and give an idea of the themes and the taste of the film, and maybe like a wine thing, the flavors, the aromas.
The shelf talker.
You want those flavors, but nothing compares to drinking the wine. So you want to just give them that kind of thing, and you don't want to. It's pretty easy not to give away spoilers, so-called, because you don't need to in most part.
What's your favorite movie, Josh?
Man, I'm racking my brain because you said you were going to ask that question, and
I'll let you think.
I love movies. I've almost never in my life turned on a movie that I shut off. I think it's partially my ADHD. When I can go into a world and it quiets my brain, it's just fantastic. Even if it's a terrible movie and people are like, I hate it.
Even if it's Ishtar, you're like, I'm there.
But, I think a lot of it is tied up to nostalgia too.
Sure.
And so if I'm thinking of what's my favorite movie, I don't really
just
know.
Up there. Okay.
But probably top 5 and at some points The Goonies.
Okay. How do you rate that? What did you think when the Goonies came out? What did you do?
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong.
I'm sure it was terrible.
The Goonies is a classic.
I watched it recently. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Really? Well, movies do age, and it's interesting about Sideways. It doesn't, but I mean, it might date, but it doesn't age. Some movies just do not age, and other movies
like wine.
Other movies you look at and you like the movie once upon a time, but you see now how it isn't held up.
What did you think of the movie The Jerk when you saw it?
Steve Martin was on an upward swing in those days. He had done all these interesting. So he got together with Carl Reiner, and they were a perfect team because here's the old guy, the old vaudevillian.
Which is one of my favorite movies of all time.
And then you had Steve Martin bringing his nightclub act and trying to find a way of putting that into movies, and he eventually found wonderful ways to do it. He is one of our great comic actors. But it took a while to get him there, so The Jerk was like a transitionary.
He hates these cans.
Great wine jokes in The Jerk, though.
Really?
Great wine jokes. Oh yeah, if you have to see it again,
I would love to see it.
You haven't seen it?
No.
The movie The Jerk is the absolute best. I mean, it's for my money.
He's celebrating. I can't remember the exact joke, but
can I?
Oh yeah,
they're at a date. They're at a date night at a fancy restaurant, and he's with Bernadette Peters, and they make such a great pairing, and she's darling. And he drinks this wine. He looks at the bottle and he goes, "And none of this old stuff. Bring out something new from this year or something."
We want the good stuff, the new stuff,
the new stuff. And then he says, "Get rid of the snails on the plate."
And then there's a point where he's just spending all the money on, and he has one of those, like the Sparklets bottle, the 5-gallon thing, like a water dispenser, except it has I feel like it has a burgundy label and it says Montrachet on it, or something like that. And I was like, oh my, and he's like, he goes and presses it and the bubbles go up into the 5-gallon bottle. Really good wine jokes in that movie.
We should watch it.
I was once in the Babcock wine tasting room, and they were pouring like the old 7 vintage or something, and they said, well, we're sold out of it. And the woman just asked, well, couldn't you make some more?
Yeah.
Hello.
And there was a serious question. He said, well,
No.
the guy just didn't know what to say to that.
What is a film critic's favorite movie?
Oh, no, I don't have one. No,
You can't do it.
No, you can't.
It's like asking a winemaker their
It's
favorite
like,
wine.
yeah.
I guess you're
Yeah,
right.
people
Yeah.
ask me, "What's your favorite wine?"
course.
It's
no one
it's
asks a book
impossible.
critic what their favorite novel is. I don't know what.
Yeah.
Or art critic. What's your favorite sculpture?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that.
But
I
you
really
could say
don't.
what genre, you
Sure.
like. Do you like this genre? Do you like this kind of wines? Do you like whites? Do you
Sure,
like heavy
yeah.
reds?
Before we get into the wines today, Mira, tell me about wine journalism, where it sits today. We're talking, because believe me, someone in radio,
yeah.
I've seen my industry change. We know print has changed.
Print has changed.
Media
yeah.
is changing and evolving, and if you're not ahead of it, you might get behind it. And I refuse to do that. So how have we, in your circle of influence, figured out ways to kind of look and go, okay, I see what's going on,
There's a lot going on, but I think as an individual writer, you have to go on your path. Like what it is that you like to write, the style you want to do, and stick to it. There's just a lot of noise out there. And yes, the whole field is filled with, as you said, bloggers and influencers, which is great because you learn something from each one. Each one has a different take, But it has grown. It has grown a lot, which is good for the reader, the viewer, the listener, to see what's out there.
There's just more to sift through to find the good
There's more
ones.
to sift through. But can you go through all that?
No.
There's just a lot of noise out there.
Right, you got to figure it out. You got to get recommendations.
Yes, and then
yeah.
after you sift through that, then you know which are some of the writers you like and you want to follow or listen to. But this is just too much. Just too much out there.
Yeah. Josh, tell me about this Pinot Noir before we get into the Merlot.
I'd rather
Yes.
talk about the Goonies more. So this Pinot Noir, it's funny actually. So this is actually a 2015. It's our 2015 headliner. Timbre is a musical term, and so every wine has a musical theme as well. The headliner is when you're going to a musical show, it's the band you're going to see. There's some opening acts, which we have that too, but that was the headliner.
Is this the Merlot you're pouring?
It is.
And that was the headliner Pinot Noir 2015, which is actually currently at the tasting room. We brought out a library wine. It's from Presqu'île Vineyard in Santa Maria. And what I love about wine in general is the bottling of a time and the place. And, it's like, can you make more? People ask that question so much. And the answer is obviously no. The vintage date is when the grapes were grown. We can't grow more from that date. But I love to watch these wines evolve. And so we're actually sitting in my cellar at my winery. And behind you on that wall, or behind some of us, is actually my entire career in wine. So there's 2 bottles of every wine I've ever made. On that wall. So I can go back and say 20 years ago, let's say, and I had an 04 the other night, and it was probably the best bottle of that wine I've ever had in 20 years. Yeah. So that's what we try to, that's the experience we try to do in our tasting room, is to give someone something a little bit older, a little bit more fun. And then in honor of the fact that this is Sideways, obviously we had a Pinot Noir, we're also going to have a Merlot.
I love this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Miles could only have tasted this one.
Yes.
In fact, what's funny about the movie as opposed to the book, and I read the book, I don't know, probably 17 years ago or something like that. At the end of the movie, he famously drinks a bottle of, I think it's
Cheval
61
Blanc.
Cheval Blanc.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it.
Yeah, which, funnily enough, is, I can't remember, it's 40 or 60% Merlot. It's basically a blend mostly of Merlot and Cab Franc. So the wine that he's like, I'm finally going to open it, happens to be very high percentage Merlot. In the book, it's a bottle of Romani Conti, which is a famous Burgundy, but that was way too, what are the word, meta?
Right.
Too much inside baseball. Like, first of all, it's, no one's going to understand it.
Well, Alexander Payne put that wine in there deliberately because he said that's the key wine in the whole movie.
Yeah.
The whole point is his best bottle of wine is a Merlot bottle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
That wasn't a mistake.
Oh,
I love that.
Well, it's funny. The fact that you say that, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, but then in so much of like wine in media is like you see something and you're like, wow, they had no idea what they're doing. Like at the beginning of the Olympics, they were standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. He's like, here I am. He points to a bottle of champagne and ice bucket, says, drink and fine Bordeaux. And it was like, it's like, really? Like, this is, you just spent like $200 million on this little studio. You don't know that that's champagne in the ice bucket, not fine Bordeaux, whatever. It's okay.
The prop master was wrong.
Yeah, right.
The deterioration of media, we were talking about
that. Right. But yeah, no, I do think that Miles would have enjoyed this Merlot, and I think that the same thing that happened to Merlot happened to Pinot Noir. We were talking about the $20 Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
When they tore out all of their Merlot from places where it wasn't growing well,
they planted
Pinot Noir in the same spots and those two varieties very much like the same climate, which is also interesting. So when you put them in poor climates or climates that don't really showcase or help them grow to their greatest potential, you get pretty swill, getting them swill.
Yeah.
And so I would have. Well, the truth is, if Miles were around today, he'd be drinking natural wine. So
orange wine.
Orange wines, right?
So, no, he would not be drinking my Merlot.
No.
No, he would like this Merlot.
This is very good.
There's some chocolate notes there that I really like.
Yeah, I think Merlot, like Pinot Noir, is all about structure and tension and deliciousness. And what's funny to me about, if we can take, kind of go on a sideways rant a little bit about wine, is that I truly believe that everyone just wants to be drinking Merlot all the time. Because the most popular styles of Pinot Noir are these rich and delicious styles of Pinot that are really a lot like Merlot.
Yes. They're much bigger and deeper.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes.
And then if you think about, red blend was the category that's been on the biggest tear in red wines for the last, 10 years. If you look at what makes up those wines, there's a little Syrah in there. But oftentimes these wines are Merlot based, so it's just Merlot by another name. And when you look at the Cabernets that are most popular, they're not the super tannic, really tense versions of Cabernet. They're the soft, delicious, chocolatey versions that taste just like really good Merlot. And so I think when Merlot's done well, it should be pleasing almost every red wine drinker. So I'm a big fan of it, but I've only bottled one in the last 10 years because it still doesn't sell.
That's so interesting.
This one will.
But what you said was beautiful. Before we get into how we can taste and get your wines in our home, Mira, I've always, with books, is it best to go to the website? Is it go to Amazon? How would you like us? And I'll put links to wherever you want in the show notes. But what is the best way to get this book?
Well, Amazon is always the best way, but it is available in many selected Barnes & Noble stores and other bookstores like in LA. It's Book Soup, Romans. So if you're not near the slow Barnes & Noble is not carrying it, I heard. So go to your...
Should we protest? Should we fix this?
Please do.
Yes.
So when I went there, you know what they said?
What?
They said we're not allocated by our warehouse, their warehouse. The Barnes & Noble has already allocated these books maybe to major cities like LA, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, etc. Maybe they don't know that
this is their whole market.
Right. So I told them, I said, please tell your warehouse person that A, we are local authors, B, this is where it's at.
Let's just ask, reach out to Barnes & Noble and say, hey, do you have it? It's almost like when you want something, you go call and ask for it.
Yeah.
And they get enough calls, they're going to bring it in.
If a few dozen people call them, then they'll call the warehouse. But go to Amazon and really, if you like it, love it, put a little, even if it's 2 lines, put a little comment on it. We would love that. I
mean, great pictures from the movie, thoughts, interviews. I mean, and then you get into, the Frank Ostini revolt and the chapter. I mean, you really, with both of your expertises, I mean, you dive 100% in to the film aspect and its significance, and we're diving in 100% in to the wine and locality and its significance. So, I mean, I think it's so cool that you guys are, a couple and put this things together out. But this is a partnership of, a really accomplished wine writer and a really accomplished film critic. And here we are, Sideways Uncorked. This is very special. Josh, let me ask you, how can we taste Timbre wines? Some of my absolute favorite. We're in the winery in San Luis Obispo, but we're tasting in the Village in AG.
Yep. We have a tasting room open 5 days. It's open Thursday through Monday, basically afternoon hours, 12 to 5, 12 to 6 on Friday and Saturday, in the village of Arroyo Grande. Go to our website, timbrewinery.com, spelled TIMBRE, winery.com. You can see the hours, you can see the contact, or you can make an appointment on Fridays and Saturdays. We're open at the winery in San Luis Obispo, where you can come and actually see where the wine is made. Pretty fun, sometimes I'm fun.
Yeah.
So since you have a tasting room in AG and you carry Pinot and Merlot, maybe suggest you stock some books.
Sure, I would love to.
There we go. Boom.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Mira, did you have fun with this?
I loved it.
This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think I've never really got the opportunity and the blessing to sit down and chat with you this long. This is really cool.
We meet at all these various events and festivals, and you're busy doing your thing, and I'm busy, So this has been a great. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh my God, no, the pleasure is all mine. I've been following you for a long time.
The plus point is that we have Josh and we have his wines.
This is so great.
And we have Pinot and Merlot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Cool.
Kirk, it was really good. I see Mira all the time. I often see you, but this was my first time with you to really kind of engage. So it really meant a lot to me. I hope you had fun.
I'm the quiet one. She's the exuberant.
She's the pretty one. She's the one that knows the wine too. Yeah.
And also, people don't sit around wine festivals talking about film. So
I know. Yeah. We got to get these people.
And I left L.A. and it's hard to be a film critic up here. I used to have a blog and I gave that up. Yeah. So it was nice to get back into film journalism, which this is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Josh Klapper, always love having him. The last couple of times we've recorded in here, you got a lot going on. But for you to sit and give us some time, this was rad, man. Thank you.
And Adam, you're quite a hero here, and we love you on the Central Coast. You know that.
Means a ton. Thank you very much.
We just, you're a star here.
Yeah, well, I will let you interrupt Josh to say that about me anytime. That was the most beautiful thing.
I'm sorry.
Please, please more of that. No, I just want Josh to go away while you talk more about me.
Carry on, Josh.
No, you're so sweet, Mira. And honestly, I will say really quick, Josh, that really means a lot from you because I have followed, you in this business, and you have been in this business far longer than I have. And to see whether it's Home Journal or this, your writing has been everywhere, and all the people that I've been blessed to meet, coming up in this have big respect for you. So that really, I joke, but that really means a lot to me that you say that.
Thank you. Well, I mean it.
I definitely would not have said any of that.
No. Goonies.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
What do you want? He likes the Goonies. What kind of taste does he have?
I'm so glad you brought it back to that because next time we're with a famous wine critic, I'm going to ask you what your favorite wine is, Adam.
Oh my God, that is so good. Well, let's put a little bit of Merlot in Kirk's because I want to get a good cheers here. This was so much fun.
This is a very good Merlot. I must say.
Really good.
Miles would like this. By the way,
I think you would too.
The Trefethans did something interesting when the movie came out. They put I don't know if their vineyard is right on Highway 29, going up to Napa, and at the corner, facing the south, was a billboard that said, clearly Miles had never tasted Napa Valley Merlot.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Trefethan makes an excellent Merlot.
Yeah. Oh, well, Sideways Uncorked is the book. We're going to have links in the show notes on how to get it. And I can't thank you enough to the three of you for being here.
Thank you.
So much fun. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Baby. Thanks for the wine.
Oh, pleasure. Always.
What a ride through wine and film history. That was so much fun. From Mira and Kirk breaking down Sideways' unexpected influence on the wine culture, Josh, and the behind-the-scenes perspective as a winemaker, that was a great chat. I loved talking movies, too, with Kirk. Now, Pinot Noir may have stolen the spotlight, but if there's one takeaway from today, it's that wine and film, they share something deeper. Storytelling, passion, and the power to transport us. Whether it's a perfectly crafted screenplay or a perfectly balanced wine, both leave us wanting more. speaking of Pinot Noir, don't forget, giving away tickets to World of Pinot Noir, Friday and Saturday grand tastings. I got tickets to both. Friday, February 28th, March 1st, Saturday, get to adammontiel.com. You want to join me? I'm going to be doing episodes of The Pour from World of Pinot Noir, from the main tasting, amongst all the producers. It's going to be insane, as it is every year. Got different people pouring each day, but of course the ones from out of state, out of the country, the international wines, they'll be there both days. So no matter what day you go, you'll get a chance at those. But get to worldofpinotnoir.com. Thursday opening night with Moonshiner Collective. Want to be up there for that. The dinners, the panels, there's so much going on. Link in the show notes. And coming up next week, we'll be chatting with folks from World of Pinot Noir. Looking forward to it. That's adammontiel.com, where you'll see some more winning there for Blendfest on the coast with Paso wine. And speaking of Paso wine, new episode of Where Wine Takes You coming up this week. We're going to be talking to Janelle Ducey and Matt Ducey, of course, Ducey Vineyards, celebrating 100 years. And those podcasts are coming out like every week now. So go check out, link in the show notes to Where Wine Takes You, which is my podcast with Paso Wine, where we talk all wine and all Paso. And I don't know how many cross listeners we got. I imagine several, but don't forget to check out Up and Adam, daily podcast we've had on recently from sportscaster Chris Myers, where we talk the Super Bowl with legendary sportscaster Chris Myers. Adam Carolla is coming up, going to be a guest this week. Great conversation with a guy named Dave Roberts. He was the guy who they modeled the movie The Bodyguard after. Dave Roberts was Whitney Houston's bodyguard. The movie was about him. Great interview with him. That was last week. So lots going on Up and Adam as well. And you can find that all at adammontiel.com. All right. Thanks to Moonshiner Collective for original music on the Pour called Come Alive. Thanks for connecting. I'm Adam Montiel. You know, the best conversations, like the best wines, always leave you wanting more. Until next time, stay thirsty for the good stuff and keep coming back for the Pour.
It's The Pour with Adam Montiel. You can hear The Pour in its entirety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. For more, visit adammontiel.com.